Very pleased not to be joined here at Blog of the Boys by the one and only, the dashing, the debonair. He has been cast to play James Bond in the next iteration when Daniel Craig gives the role up. It is world-renowned author, and I really don't even know where to introduce him from because he's got a variety of cookie jars that his hands are in. It is David Fleming. David, thank you so much for taking the time to join us at Blog of the Boys.
My pleasure. Boy, thank you for reading the intro that I typed out for you, introducing me as James Bond. I appreciate it.
Yeah, that's one of the points of pop culture that I'm not too familiar with as I say that out loud. And maybe that's like an off-season project for me, is like watch all the Bonds. There's like 50 of them or something like that.
Yeah. And, of course, the original writer of James Bond was a Fleming, Ian Fleming. So
only you would know that. Given your investigative prowess, can you lay out who you are before we get into what you do? Because I think those two things work really well in perfect harmony.
Yeah, currently I am. I'm the author of 4 books. This is my 4th book, and I am a correspondent right now for Pablo Torre's show and Meadowlark Media. And before that, I was a writer for ESPN the Magazine, and Sports Illustrated.
So you are very well versed in digging through a number of details. I think Pablo's reputation in that, if you have like any tangential relation to Pablo, you're regarded as someone who can figure anything out about anyone, let alone even James Bond. I think is under fire from you all.
Yeah, so this interview better go well, RJ, or else we're coming for you.
Exactly. I really do feel that pressure. So we're here today to talk about a big mess in Texas. You've written several books. This is about the 1952 Dallas Texans. Now, when I first heard about this, I imagine you've run into this, naturally presumed it was with regards to the Chiefs, the Kansas City Chiefs, and their origins as the Dallas Texans in the AFL. I was telling you right before we started recording, I'm a big NFL history aficionado. Self-proclaimed aficionado, but big fan of NFL history, I should say. And so this is not that. I want to let you walk us through this, but this is a massive thing. I'm going to give away 2 copies of this on social media after people watch this. You were kind enough to send me some, but the label, the cover says the Miraculous, Disastrous 1952 Dallas Texans and the Craziest Untold Story in NFL history. So let's back that up, David.
Yeah, that is 100% true. And I know that you like all things classic Cowboys, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, you can't get any more classic Cowboys than the team that was originally supposed to become the Cowboys. It was the 1952 Dallas Texans were the NFL's first franchise in the South, the first professional football team in Texas. And then 5 months later, after sort of partying and spending their way out of the NFL, they were the last NFL team to go bankrupt. So I feel like this is a story every Cowboys fan should know, and every sort of NFL buff, history buff should know. But yeah, for some reason, the Texans have sort of disappeared into the ether over the last 75 years.
Yeah, so I watched some of your TikToks where you were promoting this and talking about it, and you referred to this story as correct me if I'm wrong, Slapshot meets something meets North Dallas 40. North Dallas 40, also a story that all Cowboys fans should know. And I know you have aspirations of this becoming a film or a Netflix series. North Dallas 40 was a movie. Again, something that people don't really talk about enough. This to me was also XFL meets the Alliance of American Football League that folded like 5 minutes after it started. That was just completely and totally shocking. Again, the idea alone of an NFL team, of a professional football team going bankrupt is impossible to conceive in our current reality. Like that in and of itself is so shocking.
Right. And on top of that, in Texas, in Dallas, home to the greatest, most profitable, popular NFL franchise of all time by a factor of 10, right? And it's so bizarre that, and I think that's what haunts the people who were associated with this team originally, was that they were just that close to sort of being America's team. And in fact, the title for this book, the working title was Almost America's Team for a long time. But we thought people got a bigger kick out of a big mess in Texas. But yeah, I think It was a disaster from the very beginning, and a disaster in the best possible way. You mentioned, I think Slapshot meets Animal House.
That's what it was. Yeah.
North Dallas 40. And I need to do more digging into this, but I really think that there are elements from this book and from this team and the story that North Dallas 40 is based off of. It was one of those things where the team was loaded with talent, and it showed it once in a while during the season, but things went sideways so quickly. I think they never recovered financially. If you can imagine an NFL team in Dallas drawing 8,000 people to the Cotton Bowl, it just seems like we're talking about a team that was on a different planet.
Yeah, it's also worth mentioning that North Dallas 40, written by Peter Gent, told from the perspective of somebody on the Cowboys. So this is very different than that, just, so that nobody gets their wires crossed here. I also would offer that, and maybe this is implied, but this serves, at least served, as the origins for what became both the Cowboys and the Dallas Texans that followed. You're talking about in a literal sense, the model for a professional sports team in Dallas, in Texas. Again, not necessarily following this exact layout or game plan. But I mean, if not for this team, you can make a strong argument that the Cowboys or Texans and subsequently the Chiefs never exist.
Yeah, and I think they benefited they learned from the lessons what not to do from the 52 Dallas Texans. I think they just took a blueprint and just did the opposite. But there is a direct connection between the 52 Texans and the Dallas Cowboys. I mean, just with the team colors, the Cowboys lifted the blue, the white, and the silver, and the Lone Star logo. I mean, they lifted all of that from the Dallas Texans and have never really, which is strange to me, but have never really acknowledged that or made that connection to the sort of original team that made it all possible. But then you're right. And I think there have been, literally, you would know better than me, there's been like a minor league hockey team called the Dallas Texans. There's been an arena league named the Dallas Texans. And then, of course, the Chiefs started out as the AFL version of the Dallas Texans. But this 52 team was the originals.
So I don't want to jump too far because I have some thoughts on the Colts, the Baltimore Colts, and the correlation here. But as it relates to Dallas and to this team, we've been dancing around how they folded. I also don't want to give the book away. I want people to read it. But from a 30,000-foot perspective, why did they die so quickly? I recognize that's very difficult to smash into a simple answer, but it is miraculous and disastrous all at the same time, obviously.
Yeah, so I think there's a couple of different answers, but and this is part of the fun of the book, and I think why people, especially modern fans, should learn more about the 1950s era of the NFL, which was just, it was this post-war boom, economic boom in America, and the players had all gone to World War II and had come back, and none of them thought they were going to survive the war. So they come back, and now they get to play football for a living. And so it infused the NFL with like this. It was so much fun, and it was violent and colorful, but the players didn't really take it too seriously. And the game was just wide open, tons of like trick plays and wild characters. And it was before, and then from an economic standpoint, the 1950s, what really changed the game forever was television money.
Right.
And that didn't really kick in until the late 1950s. And so this era before the television money kicked in as a revenue stream, people are not going to believe this, but it's the absolute truth. 31 of the first 43 franchises in NFL history went bankrupt. And the Texans were the final team to do that because they only needed to survive a couple more years before the TV money kicked in. But because fans at the time in Dallas, they loved college football and they loved high school football, but they considered this NFL team with a league based in New York to be foreigners, to be not Texans.
The North, yeah, like that paradigm is important to like understand relative to the context of the time.
Exactly, because their sole revenue stream was ticket sales. and nobody showed up to the Cotton Bowl to support the team. And there are other reasons too. This was the Jim Crow South, and 1952 Dallas was not ready. The Texans' two best players were Buddy Young and George Talfaro, and they were black. And, the stark reality is, and it's important not to maybe turn away from this for people to learn this part of the story, but the reality was Dallas, the NFL, America in general was not ready for an integrated roster in 1952.
Yeah, I mean, again, you're talking about immediately post-war. I think a lot of people tend to associate, at least from my readings and my studies, the early days of the Cowboys with the JFK assassination. I mean, again, you're talking about just moments in world history, not even American history at that point in time. But this predates all of that. I mean, easily. And you're right. I mean, before television comes along, way before the merger, but way before even the AFL is like really its own competing property. I think that now it's harrowing to think about how far ago the 80s were or something like that. But people think of the original USFL as like the only other league that competed with the NFL. This was at a time when you had the AAFC and all these different leagues that were, trying to somewhat challenge the NFL. And the NFL was not regarded as this. I would offer, and you would know better than me relative to your studies here, the Cotton Bowl was revered more as an institution than the NFL. I mean, just because of what the Cotton Bowl represented to people in that specific market.
Oh, 100%, 100%. And I think people don't understand, right? The NFL, and I think it's almost hard for people to understand this in today's context. You got the Cowboys who are worth tens of billions of dollars, right? But the NFL, up until maybe 1958, when you've got the Colts beat the Giants in the greatest game ever played in sudden death, and all of a sudden 50 million people watch that game. Up until that moment, the commissioner, Bert Bell, cried after that game because for 20 years, the NFL was on the verge of total collapse from week to week. People didn't know what teams were going to survive, what teams were going to go bankrupt. It's hard to imagine now, but for the longest time, the NFL, professional football in general, just didn't seem viable until really, again, this is another really interesting stat from the 50s. At the start of the 1950s, less than 10% of American households had televisions.
That's crazy.
And at the end of the 1950s, it was above 90%. And all of a sudden, everybody needed something to watch, something violent and colorful and entertaining. And it was football. And that's how it took off.
You mentioned the greatest game ever played, which did vault the NFL into a different stratosphere of pop culture, involved the Colts. I mentioned there's I don't even want to say a tangent, but there's a direct line between this Dallas Texans team and the Colts. And I don't know if it's fair for a Cowboys fan to have some sort of reverse anger about losing what would have been franchise icons, because if I presume if this team had flourished, the Dallas Cowboys would have never existed. I mean, we could get really deep into the hypotheticals there, but please offer the connection between this Dallas Texans team and what we now know to be, through many different steps later, the Indianapolis Colts.
Yeah, I appreciate you bringing that up, because I think as crazy and as sort of as awful as this season went for the Texans, they still managed to change the course of football history, NFL history in particular. And I think it's not a coincidence. I don't think the NFL really wants people to know that this disastrous team in Texas that went bankrupt in 5 months, essentially, and drank their way and partied their way out of the league in 5 months, that team went on to become the all-American, clean-cut, NFL-saving Johnny Unitas Baltimore Colts that basically saved the NFL. And I don't know about you, I'm guessing you feel the same way. I just kind of love the fact that the sort of perfect, the perfect Baltimore Colts, they have a dark secret, and it's the fact that they were the Dallas Texans. And then, of course, the Baltimore Colts became today's AFC leading Indianapolis Colts. So it's weird, right? I mean, can you imagine, as popular as the Cowboys are right now, if they had been the Texans / Cowboys and had Johnny Unitas and were part of the greatest game ever played, I mean, it would be whatever the Cowboys are right now, it would be times a million.
Yeah, well, it helps explain, I think, the origins. I always wonder where like some team names are like the Baltimore Ravens, which is a newer team, relative to context. That mascot makes sense, and I know there was the big old like, what do you want it to be in the city of Baltimore? But like, the Baltimore Colts never made sense to me, but now it kind of does. Like now there's some sort of tie to the past, tie to some Texas roots. And to your point, I think everyone believes their deep, dark secret to be how they left in the middle of the night for Indianapolis. Like that's the like worst thing that like the Colts franchise ever did. And not that they had any direct involvement here, but this, these are they have genetic ties to the 1952 Dallas Texans, and you can't, just wave that away. But it's also fascinating to me to consider if this team had, existed for forever. Does the brain trust that became the Dallas Cowboys from what was analytics at the time perspective from their draft evaluation, does Roger Staubach ever get discovered, or does he just live life after the Navy? I mean, and just be a realtor or something normal, you know what I mean? Like, it's fascinating to think about the sliding doors that were, still, I think, the ramifications of involved here and how many lives they changed. And, again, we're talking about the greatest game ever played. That could have been the Dallas franchise that may or may not have become the Cowboys from a mascot standpoint.
Yeah, and I love the idea. Sliding doors with this team in this book is such a great way to put it, because, the Texans' first touchdown that they scored was the result of a fumbled punt. And you guess who fumbled that punt and decided maybe he should go into coaching? Tom Landry. Art Donovan and Gino Marchetti, who were arguably the greatest defensive line tandem in the history of the NFL. They started on the Dallas Texans together. You've got a guy, the Iron Claw, the guy who is
not the wrestling move.
No, the wrestling guy.
Oh, okay.
Yes. He was a rookie he's in this
book. Von Buren. Von Buren is, yeah.
Fritz Von Buren or something. Yeah. It's an amazing name. But all that. Tex Schramm was associated with this team. Pete Rozelle. It just goes on and on and on. This team is like the Forrest Gump of the NFL. They seem to be connected to every aspect of NFL history.
It does. When you bring up those names, and I think certainly the one that reinforces it for me is Tex Schramm's involvement. It does feel like a movie, like The Butterfly Effect, where time keeps changing. Like you keep seeing different timelines of the same sort of sequence of events, and ultimately things wind up being similar, right? Like people are ultimately destined for success in certain things. It's just a matter of like what uniform they wear to get there, or what process it takes for them to get there. So like, it's easy to, I think, draw the conclusion that Tex Schramm would have been involved in professional football, whether it was with the 1952 Dallas Texans and what they went on to accomplish, or a new upstart team in the city, in the locale, 8 years later in the Dallas Cowboys.
Yeah. And they have players like that throughout. They have, Frank Tripucka ended up becoming their quarterback. And same thing, he sort of wandered around after Notre Dame. He was in Chicago. He couldn't really catch on. And it was just because the Texans were desperate. They gave him a chance. And he ends up becoming a member of the Denver Broncos Ring of Honor. And you talk about a sliding door butterfly moment there, right? He was a coach. He was an assistant coach with the Broncos. When their players their quarterbacks got hurt during the preseason, he goes in and he cobbles together like a uniform at halftime and plays for the Broncos and ends up remaining their starting quarterback. And he's now on their Ring of Honor. And it's so bizarre that he started with this poor Dallas Texans team, who I should tell you, by the way, they played that game, Frank Tripucka's first game as a Texans quarterback, in Akron, Ohio. Because right. When the team went bankrupt in Dallas, the NFL took him over and moved him to Hershey, Pennsylvania for some reason. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. You really, even I can't.
No. And so, I mean, again, I love all these details, and I love the NFL's involvement. that element feels very this is a far more tragic situation, but when the NFL was figuring out what to do with the Saints after Hurricane Katrina, like, we'll just put you here, we'll just put you there, we'll just play your games. Or the report last week that the Jaguars are going to play in Orlando for a year while their stadium gets renovated or whatever. That kind of stuff is really rare, but this was like the NFL just being like, okay, you're our team now, we don't really care about it. Like David Stern with the old school Pelicans, type thing. But so the other sliding doors moment for me that really stuck out, that at least that sticks out even more through our conversation, especially given Tex Schramm's involvement, because everybody from a Cowboys slant credits Tex Schramm. I know Jerry rightfully deserves a lot of credit for his marketing prowess and what he's turned the Cowboys into, but that for younger fans, that was Tex Schramm. Like, Tex Schramm built the Cowboys into the monster that Jerry Jones amplified. But to that point, correct me if I'm wrong, because you certainly know better than me, this team's only victory came on Thanksgiving of their season.
Yes.
And Tex Schramm was arguably the biggest catalyst behind the Cowboys' involvement on Thanksgiving Day. We're chatting here on November 10th. We're around the corner. That is not even traditionally. That is undeniably the most watched regular season game or football game that is played in America outside of the Super Bowl, without question. The Dallas Cowboys on Thanksgiving Day, whoever they're playing. I think you can make an argument that the bare bones basic origins of that idea were born during the 1952 Dallas Texans' win on Thanksgiving Day.
Yeah, and it is, I know 50 million people are going to watch this Thanksgiving, and that's great.
And this conversation too, by the way.
Yeah. And there is nothing that could happen on Thanksgiving in Dallas that could be more bizarre than what the 52 Dallas team went through. They had been moved to Hershey, so now they are essentially homeless. They were still called the Dallas Texans, even though they were based in Hershey. And they were supposed to play the Chicago Bears, the George Halas Chicago Bears, in Dallas on Thanksgiving. But now they couldn't do that. But they also couldn't play in Chicago because the Bears had an agreement with the Cardinals to not play home games on the same weekend.
The NFL's Cardinals, by the way, for people who don't know, they began in Chicago.
Correct. And so now the NFL has days to figure out where to put these two teams and where they're going to play. And so Burt Bell, the commissioner, decides, we're going to put you guys in the Akron, something called the Akron Rubber Bowl. And it's going to be a doubleheader between a high school game and then the Bears are going to play the Texans in Akron. And so 30,000 people show up to the Rubber Bowl in Akron for the high school game. And then when the high school game ends, 29,500 of them all left and went home to have Thanksgiving dinner. And so now the Bears and the Texans have to play each other in this empty stadium in Ohio. And somehow, it's a long story, but the Chicago Tribune called it the greatest upset in the history of the NFL. The Texans, who were winless at that point. I think they were 0-10 and they were last in every statistical category. I think it was one of those great sort of like, it is kind of like a North Dallas 40 moment. These players all just said enough. Like, we're sick of this. We're sick of the way we were treated by the NFL. We're sick of the Bears. We're sick of everybody. And they rose up and in one incredible afternoon beat the Chicago Bears, who were one of the favorites to win it all that year. So this book and this story really, it's got it all, really. It's got these incredible wins and these incredible highs and incredible lows. And then my favorite part of the book is the team celebrated that one victory for about a month. I think they spent the following month in a bar, basically celebrating their one victory.
I love books like this, and I love the context, because I think people heard what you said and think like the Bears, like at the time the Bears ruled all. Like that was the Bears and Browns' NFL. Like, people, again, we're so far removed. We're almost a century removed at this point, if we round up a little bit here. Like, that they were the gold standard. Like, to say they ran the NFL is not a strong enough way to put it. George Halas was like the most renowned man in the entire NFL. And so, to your point, beating them, again, not even that Thanksgiving was sacred at that point in time with regards to football, but beating them in general was a big old deal. You talk again about how this team kind of drank their way out of the NFL. I think we look back at the players of the early days of the league. People think of like Don Meredith being this like swashbuckler, or on the subject of the, I guess, following Dallas Texans, the Len Dawson photo of him smoking. Like, people think of dudes like that's who these guys were. Like, these guys were, football was this like maybe 10th level priority for them. They wanted to party and party hard.
Oh man. So there's a couple of great stories in the book. And one of them was when Art Donovan played for the Texans. They played Bobby Lane, who is a Dallas native, right? And Art Donovan tackles him, and he sacks him after a pass play, and they are sort of like face mask to face mask. And Art Donovan goes, "Bobby, whoa, you smell like the bottom of a wine bottle." He's like, "You must have partied last night." And Bobby Lane was like, "Oh no, I hate this team. I was drinking at halftime."
That's so sick.
So it's just, I know that the game is like so corporate and buttoned down, and it needs to be, and it should be, but there was like this element of like anything goes in the 1950s, and the Dallas Texans just embodied that. One of my favorite players, sorry, I cut you off.
Oh, no. I want to hear this more.
So one of their best players was a guy from Ore City, Texas, and his name was Forrest Chubby Grigg. And he was like 350 pounds. And he was famous for eating hot dogs during halftime.
Of course.
But he liked grasshopper drinks, the cream de mint. They sound god awful, but
yeah.
He would, after games, he would go into a bar and he would order 17 grasshoppers. And then he would pick a teammate. Everybody was afraid of Chubby, so nobody would say no. And then they would race toward the middle, and whoever drank the 9th grasshopper would win the contest. And it usually ended up with either someone getting in a fight, someone vomiting, or just passing out.
Well, first of all, those sound like what they're going to be serving at like the Wicked premiere. You know what I'm saying? Like those types of drinks. But that's also I think about the have you seen Men of Honor with Robert De Niro and Cuba Gooding Jr.? The scene where they're sort of like in this pissing match at the bar, and they put on the nautical helmets and fill them up with water, and they have to just like it's like who can stave off drowning longer, and it's the dumbest thing ever that anyone would ever do. I suppose that may happen in Annapolis, or maybe used to happen. I really couldn't attest to that, but this is kind of that. Like I'm not somebody who goes out a lot, but I imagine that those types of things aren't necessarily commonplace anymore. Like those types of like, everyone clear the bar, we're gonna line up our 17 grasshopper drinks so the super massive human being can call someone out and play a game against them. What a time to be alive.
Oh my God. So then I didn't finish that story. He does.
Oh.
So the one time when they were in Hershey and he did that after they beat the Bears, he wins the contest, passes out. Now they have to figure out how to get him back to the team hotel. So, and it's snowing out in Hershey. There's like a blizzard. So they go outside. Art Donovan finds a sled, a kid's like Red Ryder sled. And they put Chubby onto the sled. And then it takes 8 teammates to drag Chubby's lifeless body through the snow-covered streets of Hershey back to the team hotel. And the Texans, being the Texans, they're singing Christmas carols the whole time. They're dragging their teammate through the snow.
Wow. Very different situation from the reindeer and Santa on on that sled. But wow, that is so awesome. I mean, and those are the types of things that, just to your point, would certainly never see the light of day, but never in all practical senses happen in today's NFL. It's much too, I mean, the world has changed and whatnot and things like that, but that is sick. Shout out to Chubby and the grasshoppers and the snow and Hershey. I mean, like, you're talking, to your point, like a Dallas Texans team in Hershey, Pennsylvania, in the snow at Christmas time with grasshoppers, a man named Chubby. It's an impossible thing to conceive.
I mean, honestly, together, you and I could not invent this story. It's so incredible, and it feels like every week of the season contains a story that's just as strange as this. And at first I was like, my God, I've covered the NFL for decades, and I had no idea that this team existed. I had no idea that they had done all this stuff. And so I almost was like a fan getting to sort of uncover all really important stuff too for NFL history. It was one of those things that did not feel like a job getting to do this book.
That is so cool. Yeah, my parents are watching Breaking Bad for the first time, and it's one of those things where I'm like, I'm so jealous of you getting to experience these things. So to your point, you kind of got to live the season as it was, even if you did know the final destination. The ride was still incredible. To explain, I think this is important, the context of how you even discovered them. Can you please walk us through what your catalyst was to where you I don't want to spoil it, but the path in which you discovered this team is really cool, in my opinion.
Yeah, well, I mean, the niche that I had carved out at ESPN and now with Pablo is sort of these tangentially things that are barely related to sports, but like the weirder, the stranger, the more bizarre, the better. And that just became sort of my little corner of the sports media world. And so I was always on the lookout for weird, stranger than fiction stories. And I think I have Detroit Lions fans and diehard Cleveland Browns fans in my family. I mean, think how sad our Thanksgivings are in the Fleming family, but
not anymore. But I mean, yeah, for a long time, definitely.
Yep. And it was after the Browns. The Lions had already gone winless, and then the Browns, I think in 2017, went 0-16. And trying to be a good son or a good cousin or a good nephew, I was trying to do research to make the argument that it's okay. The Browns are not the worst team in NFL history. And that's when, just trying to do that, I came across this story of the 1952 Dallas Texans. And then you start peeling back the layers. And as somebody who lives for this kind of stuff, I just couldn't believe not only, that I had just uncovered this, but nobody else had ever written about it. I was just giddy.
I mean, you should be, because it's a very specific thing that the team is one element of the story. And I don't mean to bury that, because they're the subject of your book, obviously, but it's representative of the culture of the time in the NFL, which doesn't get discussed enough. I mean, not enough people have read America's Game by Michael McCambridge to, I think, fully get the context of what life was like then. And to your point, not just from a lifestyle standpoint in the NFL, but a business one. I mean, it's impossible for someone who's 20 years old to conceive of a world where the NFL wasn't dominating things. I don't really recall the movie Concussion with Will Smith, but something that always stood out to me about it through the trailer was it was like the tagline of the movie. One of the attorneys in the film telling Will Smith's character, "You're going after a company that owns a day of the week," and that was such a powerful statement to me. And that is who the NFL is. But at this time, they were a joke. Like at this time, Major League Baseball ran circles around them. To your point, there were other levels of football that ran circles around them. So that a team could be this bad and this hysterical when nobody cared is pure theater in my mind.
Yeah, and I think Art Donovan is the one who said in the 50s it was like football was less popular than baseball, boxing, college football, and he said even synchronized swimming. Like the NFL finished 5th in that race, and he wasn't really exaggerating. I mean, people they didn't take to it until that sort of magic, the sort of perfect storm of everybody having a TV, and people then sort of, especially in post-war America, 16 million soldiers came back from World War II. And I think they found baseball all of a sudden was too slow and too boring. Right. And it was this sort of violent, colorful entertainment of football that just fit perfectly with the era of television, and the rest is history.
We needed the iron claw is ultimately what I've learned through this conversation. David, I'm going to give away 2 copies of this on Twitter. And so people can follow me there, and I'll tag you and all that stuff. But this was so awesome. I really cannot tell you how enlightening this was for me. And the book is amazing. So I'll also, we'll place some links to where to purchase down in the description below. And last thing, as I understand, you have an event in the Dallas. We have people who watch from all over, but I believe you have an event in the Dallas area coming up for anyone who is local.
Yes, thank you for mentioning that, because I had already I got all excited about talking about grasshoppers.
The grasshoppers, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I'm doing a virtual book event for the Dallas Public Library on November 18th. If you go to their website, you can register for that. And I will be sipping a grasshopper during the entire event, I think.
I hope this does get some sort of visual adaptation, and I want you to start the reconnaissance on who will play Chubby. You know, we've got to find that person on who's going to do that, and that scene, and what it's going to look like. And the sled, like, I mean, you've painted a very colorful picture, and so we must see it now, in a full feature sense.
I could put on some pounds. I could play Chubby, I think.
You know, through AI, anything is possible, David. That's so. We'll see what we can conjure up. Thank you so much for the chat, and thank you for the time. This really was amazing.
Appreciate it, RJ. Thanks.